Buenos días y muchas gracias por permitirme participar en esta conferencia internacional. Mi nombre es Thierry Vieville, director de investigación en INRIA, y lo siento, no hablo este idioma en absoluto. This is the reason why I'm going to make this talk in English. ¿Cómo explicar la computadora? We're going to try to do that by telling the story of four persons who are at the origin of this digital age we are living in now. And the main message is that we want our kids not only to use those smartphones or computers, but to have a control on it. And do not use your smartphone, but program it. As being said by a guy called Barack Hussein Obama, that you know has been the last great and very good president of the United States of America. If you want to present computer science to someone in the street, to everyone, there are three keywords. One is algorithm, the second is information, the third is machine, and the fourth is language. And we are going to make this presentation by considering those four keywords, those four concepts. Let us start with algorithm. You know what? If you explain something and there are still intelligence in it, it is not an algorithm. If you want something to be done by a machine, it must be completely stupid. You have to put all intelligence out of the process and transform it in something totally mechanical. As you can read on the slide, in that case, it is an algorithm. And I would like to show you how you can explain this very easily. For this, I suggest we go in the kitchen and we make a cake. In order to make a cake, it's very simple. You have to take flour, eggs, butter, and sugar in equal quantity, mix them, you put the orange flavor, if it's an orange cake, of course, and you put it in the oven for 20 minutes. You got it? Of course you got it. You have something between your ears. It's called a brain. And if I explain this to a human, indeed he will understand and do it rather properly. But the real question is, what happens if we ask this to a robot? A robot is nothing but a marionette with a computer in it, okay? If you ask a robot to do that, it is going to do exactly what you said. Mix flour, eggs, butter. Oh, eggs! It will put the egg like that. You have absolutely no meaning about what's an egg, and no robot will just break the egg before putting it into the box, because this has no meaning for it. A human will not do that, except if it is or she is totally drunk. But this is the first characteristic. The machine does something, but it has no meaning for it. And your robot is going to put the cake in the oven for 20 minutes exactly, without to put the oven on, just because you didn't tell it. So a robot or a computer has absolutely no implicit knowledge about something. Okay, this was my main idea. A machine is stupid, and for instance, if you take a small pocket calculator to calculate 3 plus 4, it means it is 7. If you calculate 3 plus 4, you're going to obtain 7, but the machine does not know it is 7. you that in fact do the calculation by using a machine to help your brain to make the calculation. Okay, let's go to my second idea. How do you explain algorithm and programming to someone? Go back in the kitchen and play the following game. One is going to be the robot, and the other is going to explain the recipes, but because the robot is totally stupid, it is going to explain the recipes in such a way that it cannot do any mistake. And then you're not going to say, take the flour, eggs, butter, and sugar. It doesn't know what it is. You're going to say, turn left, open the door. If the process open the door is pre-programmed, take the package with F-L-O-U-R. If you have pre-programmed in the robot the recognition of the letter F-L-O-U-R to make flour. If you want to make an algorithm, you're going to derive a sequence of expression, sequence of very elementary instructions. This is an algorithm. You got that? Sequence of instruction? I have four things to share. The second, what happens if you have no butter? What do? You can stop the cake, or you can put oil. Well, it works. It's not very good, but it works. But as far as computing is concerned, it means that your algorithm is no more a sequence of instructions, there is a test. If there is butter, carry on the recipes. If there is no butter, take oil and do the recipes with oil. You understand that this mechanical intelligence is a sequence of instructions plus tests to make one thing or another thing depending on what happened. And of course, you have to prepare, you have to think about all the tests you have to do to make your algorithm work. Okay, that was my second idea. The third idea is, I explain orange cake for lemon cake or chocolate cake. Do I have to repeat all the recipes? No, of course. You just have to say, make the cake with lemon or chocolate instead of orange. In fact, you're using a variable. A variable is a box, like my coffee cup. And because we are doing a cake, the label, the sticker on the box is perfume, the perfume of the cake. And the value you put in it is orange or chocolate, whatever. If you have a variable, you can do all the cake in the world. You just have to change the value. It is the same thing with your wash machine. Your wash machine is very clever and very stupid. Very clever because it washes everything. Very stupid because it's only a machine. And your variable is the water temperature, depending on this. Yes, I know how to wash my clothes. Depending on this, you can wash either the common clothes or more specific things. Okay, that was my third thing. Sequence, test, and variable. And the last one is loop. If you want to write an algorithm, you need loop. For instance, for the cake, you do not put in the oven for 20 minutes. My oven is very bad, it's very old. So I put it 5 minutes, take a look. If it's cooked, I stop. If not, I will cook for 5 minutes. So you see, the algorithm is a loop, which is cook 5 minutes, test and repeat until the cake is nice. Sequence, test, variable, and loop. You know what? I have a huge result, the fundamental result of computer science to share with you. If you're going to have sequence, test, variable, and loop, you can do all algorithms in the world. There are no algorithms that cannot be decomposed in terms of those ingredients. This is the main idea about algorithms. And this is very interesting to know that, oh, it's totally useless. You're not going to get money, to get richer, but you will better understand what is a computer. And take a look at this Scratch. Oh, Scratch is a platform for kids to get initiated to programming, not to become programmers, no, just to understand how it works and also to develop creativity. And in this Scratch environment, that most of you know, I think, you have sequence, test, variable, and loop. Okay, that was my second main idea. Now, I have a question for you. Who invented algorithms? It is Mr. Yes, Mr. Algorithm. Well, his name is almost algorithm. He is Al-Khwarizmi. Ibn Muhammad Al-Khwarizmi. I like such a name. But what is even more fascinating, amazing, is that this guy, this scientist, lived 1,000 years ago, 10th century. It was in Persia. Now it's Iran and Iraq and Iran, sorry. And at that time, they had to do mathematics, calculation, without knowing mathematics because it was so long ago. So this guy had the idea to take some mathematical processes and write it as a recipe. You remember my story of the cake? Yes, as a recipe. And because of that, he has been able to write a book, which is in front of you. I'm sorry, I don't read Arabic, but it's a very nice writing. And in this book, he made by permutation of variable. Now you know what's a variable, huh? A box with a label on which you put value. He was able to make calculation, and he gave a name. The name is algebra. He's also one of those guys who invented what we call the Arabic numbers, the number we use today. They are also the guys who invented the zero. No, sorry, it's not them, it's Indian. In fact, we don't care. We don't care. This is an absolutely marvelous story of the humanity. Look, this is the world. Here you have the Muslim area. Here you have India, and here you have Greece. In India and Greece, they start mathematics, geometry. In Greece, what will be called algebra in India, and Indian people invented the zero. And Muslim people from Persia, they have translated in Arabic because it was like Latin for her. Arabic was their own language. And they understood everything, they improved. And when we, Western people, start to do modern science, we have reused their results and saved years and years of work. This is a very nice story, isn't it? How different from what we heard on the media about Islamic people. When you are teaching computer science to kids, it's very important to teach computer science. It's also important to teach history. It's also important to give a culture. This is the reason why, for the second chapter, we are going to meet another person. A person who has understood what is information. I will change my way of presenting things. Now I will be more superficial. I will give you the main ideas without getting in technical details at the difference of the previous presentation. So, what is information? And what is a bit, a binary element? The first idea you have to understand is that there is an atom of information. If you ask me something and I only answered I mean I only use one word, I give you no information. But as soon as I use yes and no, true and false, okay or not okay, whatever, okay or not okay, whatever, I'm giving you information. The bit, the 0, 1, is the smallest amount of information you can give to someone. And this is a real concept. So you have binary information in computers for electronical reason. Yeah, this is true. But also for a theoretical reason, because this is the smallest amount of information, not random, but deterministic information. Yes, in computer it's also interesting to use binary code because it means that you have either no current, nothing, or short circuit, which means no volt, so no volt or no ampere, and in that case it saves energy. And it's more robust than using several levels of signal. Okay, but it's not the point today. The point today is to explain the coding of information. And what is the coding of information that everyone knows? It's picture and pixels. We, all of us, know that an image is made of points. Look at this car here. And that if those points are small enough, you will see that as an image. Everybody knows, look at this smiley, that if you use a 0 by is white and black is 1, or the other way around, we don't care. In that case, usually is going to make any picture or any approximation of a picture. This is very interesting because it helps people to understand that you have a picture, which is an object in the real life, like my camera picture, and you can code that in bit. This is the reason I'm recording this talk and you are watching it. You know what? There is a very nice game to propose to kids to help them understand that. For this, you take a post-it, a piece of paper. This is a post-it, believe me. And in this post-it, it's a grid, a 4 by 5 grid like here. You see here, there is a post-it, and here it's a S. So you have 1111, 100, 1110, etc. This is supposed to draw a S. So the kid has this post-it, and he's drawing a S or a O or well, what he wants in this small grid. And another kid here is waiting with a post-it, empty post-it. And of course, the goal is to transmit the drawing. And to this end, there is a rule. And the rule is, kids, you know what? You are only allowed to say 0 or 1. Surprising. But you can discuss together to choose a way to transmit the drawing, but when you will start transmit the drawing, you will only say 0 or 1. Believe me or not, it works. For Western kids, from left to right or from top to down, they start reading 1111, 1000, 110, and the other is just drawing. And at the end, the two drawings are the same. Amazing. What a better way to teach about beats and the coding of information and all that stuff. Those activities are called unplugged activities. You teach computer science, but without computer. I like this idea. Well, it's good if you have no machine, but no, it's not because some school have no machine. No. It's because you take the person out of the computer to make them think about computational thinking. This is the concrete and simple way we are teaching this. And by chance, maybe a kid is not French in my country, he might be Yiddish or Arabic, and in that case something very interesting happens. Because she or he reads from right to left and not from left to right. And here, instead of the S, he is going to draw the symmetric of the S, which is a 5. And it's absolutely interesting for two reasons. The first is, there is an error. And so you can say to the kid, wow, marvelous, you did a mistake, you did an error. It's so nice because you're going to learn something new. If you make no mistake, it means that you are just reusing what you already know, so you are not learning something new. And they are starting to search. What is the fault? Is it the fault of the French guy or the fault of the other one? Not at all. It's a question of standard. So they will discover a lot of things in computer science and beyond. Okay, of course, coding of information doesn't reduce to pixels. Of course, when you are doing a drawing, you may either use pixel like here, or you may either use another kind of code which is called vectorial coding, where in fact you're just giving the instruction. To draw this O, you may give all the pixels, or you may write, sorry for the language but you don't care, draw a circle which center is 0, 0, and which radius is 100, and the background color, is yellow. Okay. You understand what it means? It means that when you code a drawing, it can be pixelic, or it can be a list of instructions. You code information via the program that generates the information, in a sense, because it's a 4-line program with 4 instructions that's supposed to draw the head of my mother-in-law. Yes, it's a stupid joke. Okay. The very important thing is that all information seems to be coded using such a formal alphabet, binary or not, including NDA, including our genetic information that you know is coded through an alphabet of some biological molecules with 4 letters only. And all what we are, what you are, that everyone is in the nature, what the life is, can be coded with just an alphabet. And when we have decoded the genetic code, I mean the syntax of the genetic code, because of all the semantics, we are far from understanding what it is, we used algorithms, computer programs. Okay. This is also true for text, sounds, etc. And I'm very happy to tell you a few words about coding of the letter. At the beginning, it was only a United States of America story, and then they only used the alphabet you have here, without any accent, without just digits and letters. And of course, it was not possible to code Chinese text or other language text. And then we developed another coding called UTF-8, for instance. It's not the only one, but it's the most used, in which we have coded all the letters of all the world. All what the humanity has written is coded with these few bits. I like the idea. A step further, could we code the emotions? Or no, my emotion, my feeling, if I'm happy or if I am sad, is of course something that I'm living with. So you cannot code it, but you can model it. And there is a very nice model of emotion, this Pickwick wheel, where you see that all our emotions are coded and sorted according to intensity. For instance, terror, fear, or no, simple apprehension, antagonism, for instance, disgust against trust, and more interesting, this is related to basic animal behavior. For instance, rage is related to attacking a prey. And terror or fear is relating to be afraid of a predator. For instance, if you cross a lion or a tiger in the street and you're alone, you have two options. The first option is to run away, to be frightened, or to just don't move, to hope that he will not come and see you. The second option is to attack the lion. If I remember well, if you do that with a lion, it may work. While if you do that with a tiger, it doesn't. But I'm not sure. Maybe test, check, and you will tell me. The important thing here is that every information is coded in the computer, but it's only the coding. It's only a kind of model of this information, and this is something we have to remember. Very good. Thank you. I need 10 more minutes. Why did I forget to say? I forgot to tell you how you count in binary, but I don't need, because you already know how to count in binary. A binary number is just like a number, except that you only have 0, 1. So let's do together this addition. 0 plus 1, 1, 0 plus 0, 0, 1 plus 1, out. So 0, and I need to put it on the other way. So the message is, do not bother, do not be annoyed about counting in binary. It's just a stupid exercise that you already know. I also didn't mention about logic and Boolean calculus. This can be summarized in one sentence. You know what? In computer, you can calculate on numbers, but also on symbols, and also about logic. If A is true and B is true, you can calculate if A and B is true or not A is true. And this is very interesting because it allows you to use the computer also to make reasoning, of course stupid reasoning, of course mechanical reasoning. And the main important thing here is that you can do some reasoning with the machine, but complex reasoning cannot be done by the machine. It's called undecidable problems. Don't bother about that. Just remember that it is possible, but not everything is possible. Okay. The second idea you have to take with you, take away message, is that all information becomes binary, which means that all information, vision, audition, music, or what you want, can be treated the same way. Can be treated, memorized, hidden, encrypt, compressed or transmitted, the same way. And of course, copy the information is almost free. This absolutely changed our economical world. You also have to take away the message that information has a weight. The weight is the number of bits, kilo, mega, giga, tera. But the problem is elsewhere. Today, we are generating much too much information. This has a strong impact on the planet. And I'm not sure about the durability. What will happen in 1,000 years with our USB sticks? The person who has understood those ideas is a beautiful lady. She lived at the middle of the 19th century. Her name is Ada Augusta King Lovelace. She was a mathematician, and she wrote her papers using a man name. Well, not exactly a man name, but not a woman name. Because at that time, a century and a half ago, people were absolutely convinced that women were less intelligent than men. Which really means that you don't need to be a computer to be totally stupid. And if I insist on this point, it is because, yes, it is a major challenge to be sure that both halves of humanity are teaching in computer science. Because if we do not do that, if only rich people, if only white people, if only men understand computers and the others just use it, we are not going to build a very nice digital world. My third story is rather short. It's about the different languages. And to do that, I'm going to go directly to the language you know. When you put a language in a computer, it's a pure formal language. It has no meaning in a sense. Of course, it has some meaning because the computer can do something with it. And you may have heard about Scratch language, about Java or JavaScript language, about PHP, Python, C++, whatever. Hey, all these languages are the same. I mean, they are not the same, but they all integrate the same paradigm. And the first paradigm is imperative programming. If you do imperative programming, you give instruction, you give order. That was what I used at the beginning to explain algorithm. Interesting enough, it is not the only one paradigm that you can use. Another very interesting paradigm, I mean very interesting for computers, but also in the real life for computational thinking. A very interesting paradigm is object programming. Because if you have a very complex system, I mean a computer system or a software system, you want to decompose it in small objects, like your car that you decompose in terms of wheels and so on. And this paradigm is very used in computers because it allows to obtain a modular programming skill. It also obtains to reuse something you have programmed from something else. For instance, if you program something for a car, then if you are using a Mercedes or a French Renault, you can derive from the general car a few procedures, and of course, specify, particularize what you need to have for a Renault or for a Mercedes. For instance, you may have, I take another example with geometric figures. So you may have a procedure for any geometrical figures, and when you consider a square or a circle, you will redefine specific parameters, like the circle diameter, for instance, or specific method, for instance, to draw a circle. And this will allow you to have a very nice structure of your computer object. It is not the only paradigm you can find. Functional paradigm is another one. I will not discuss it today. And declarative programming is another one. And I want to spend 3 minutes on this because every day you find what we call internet addresses. You know what? This is a language. This is a small language. Look at this slide. Here you see something with file, directory, file and extension, and this file means that you are considering a file in your computer. This is the name of a guy. This is his password, and calendar is calendar. And if you write this, you will obtain the agenda, the calendar of this guy. If you write this obscure and bizarre link, you will know how to get by bus from my home to my workplace. And it's very interesting because INRIA is where I work, and of course if it's not INRIA but another place, and if you can read this awful line, you can directly change the thing. Like me when I try to hablar en español, no hablo español, pero un potico. And of course, that was all my Spanish. And of course, thanks to this knowledge, I can understand and just put one word instead of another to try to make you understand what I say. This is my heater at home, and this is of course the desired temperature. So with this URL, Uniform Resource Location, what you may call internet address, it's a way to specify both information and instruction to any device, internet devices, websites of course, but not only, on the internet on this connection. And if you look a step further, you see that this obscure, bizarre line has a syntax. The first is a scheme, like HTTP or HTTPS if it's encrypted, which is the protocol, the way those two things are going to dialogue. Then comes the authority. Authority means who and where. So where is the host, the computer, and who is the user and its password, if any. Then is the path, where is the resource, then is a query, additional parameters, and so on. So you have this capability, and really you should spend 1 or 2 hours to understand how are these addresses, these locators, these identifiers constructed, because if you do that, you will really understand a lot of things. And behind this, underneath this language, there is the notion of protocol. What is a protocol? It is an algorithm that is executed by many people. Many machines in a sense. So internet is an algorithm. Internet is a protocol. It is something that a lot of machines execute, and thanks to this, of course, you can connect to your website and so on, or you can mail to people and a lot of other applications, because of course the web is an application of internet. And so all those machines have a short part of the algorithm is called distributed programming, and thanks to this you can do rather sophisticated things, including strong computation. This is the notion of neural network. Artificial intelligence with neural networks. What does it mean? So simple. It is the discovery, the mathematical discovery, that if you have a stupid calculus, this is a stupid calculus, you take some input, you mix the input, and then you make a threshold. You again can do all numerical calculation in a way, you can approximate by a very small epsilon, if you pay the price in number of units, of any numerical calculation, any function. And this is very interesting because as soon as we have been able to put in the machine so many stupid calculations that are called neurons, but, well, more or less have nothing to do with the biological neuron, then we have been able to do very sophisticated things, such as recognizing a face in a picture, or labeling a complex picture, or recognizing codes in the field. I know it's absolutely useless to recognize codes in the field, but And the takeaway message here is that, on one hand, artificial intelligence is not intelligent but stupid. It's only the end statistics, the capability to put together so many calculations that you obtain interesting results. And there is a person who would have been very happy to know that. She's called Grace Murray Hopper. I'm a fan. She was a woman at the middle of the 20th century who was the first able to program electronic computers. She also invented the notion of bug. And at last, the word of bug, not the notion, sorry. She popularized the notion of bug. I'm sorry, the word bug was also used in the electrical field, but whatever. She had a strong contribution, and if today we can program the computer thanks to software, it's because of her and the person around her. And it's good to know that this computer science is also due to humans. And at last, I would like to present the guy who has changed our world. You know his name, I think. He's Alan Madison Turing. During the Second World War in Europe, he built a machine called Enigma, who totally decrypt the Nazism messages, but he also understood that if you use a stupid machine, a Turing machine, that's the name, you are going to be able to implement and execute all algorithms in the world as soon as it can execute a sequence, test, variable, and loop, as I explained at the beginning of my talk. Alan Turing, like Grace Hopper and like Ada Lovelace, fall in love for a man. It was not a very happy idea at that time, but it showed that computer is really something that has been built by all of us in the world. It was my pleasure and privilege to share these few ideas with you. I'm sorry not to be here, concretely in real life with you, but I wish you the best. Thank you very much.